Hi, I'm Nick Powell, City Hall Bureau Chief with City and State. Joining me on today's City and State TV is Michelle Delauz, the Executive Director of the Fifth Avenue Committee, which is a part of the Brooklyn Speaks Coalition of civic and nonprofit organizations. Thank you so much for joining us today, Michelle.
Thank you for inviting me.
So we're here to talk about the affordable housing agreement that has finally come about with the Atlantic Yards development in downtown Brooklyn. So before we get into the kind of the details of that, maybe you could just take us back. This has been a very long and kind of winding saga to get to this point. So can you just take us back, give us a little background on this
project? Sure. So Atlantic Yards was first announced back in late 2003 when Bruce Ratner bought the New Jersey Nets, and really at that point unveiled a plan to redevelop 22 acres at the nexus of several different communities in Brooklyn. And those 22 acres amount to about a $5 billion development project. And it was really a project that was sponsored by the state of New York, that bypassed the city's land use review process, and involves the creation not only of the Barclays Center Arena, which is the piece that has been completed, but also 6,400 residential units, of which 2,250 are to be affordable.
Now, so the agreement that's in place right now, how was this a long negotiation process? Was there a lot of back and forth? I mean, I imagine something that's taken this long would be, but can you take us through that a little bit?
Sure. So the original agreement around the affordable housing for the 2,250 units was actually hammered out by then ACORN, now the Mutual Housing Association of New York, so that 35% of the total units would be affordable. And that agreement was memorialized as part of a community benefits agreement and an MOU between Forest City, Ratner, and ACORN and a number of other community groups, because it wasn't just about the affordable housing, it was on a number of other things as well. But then when the project was first approved by the Empire State Development Corporation back in 2006, the entire project, including the affordable housing, was supposed to be complete by 2016. And then when the plan was modified in 2009, the state allowed Forest City to go until 2035 to complete the entire project. And really what that meant was, and basically I think we all know that many neighborhoods in the city are changing dramatically, and that's especially true of several different communities in Brooklyn, where the racial composition is absolutely changing. And basically, how affordable housing works in the city of New York is that local residents of community boards get preference for projects in their communities. And in the case of Atlantic Yards, that preference was going to be extended to residents of community boards 2, 3, 6, and 8. And so if you wait until 2035 to provide the promised affordable housing, really the thing that most people held on to as the most significant public benefit, that meant that there was going to be a delay in the provision that was primarily going to disproportionately impact African Americans. And so what Fifth Avenue Committee and the coalition of groups that under Brooklyn Speaks did is, we hired a researcher, we looked at what that delay meant, and we had some hard evidence about the disparate impact specifically on the African American community, and that really was unacceptable to us. And so, and the fact that the project really hasn't been accountable to the public at all. No local elected official voted on it. It's been challenging, to say the least. So we were prepared to file a lawsuit, a fair housing civil rights lawsuit about the disparate impact. And we decided to reach out to Forest City, to the state, and with the city's help as well, the mayor's help, to see if we could broker something, because there seemed to be some alignment about wanting to deliver the affordable housing faster, and we wanted to see if we could get some alignment on some other things that we wanted. So what we were able to accomplish was ensuring that all 2,250 units would be completed by 2025, so 10 years sooner than the most recent agreement that the state allowed. And also, some penalties if they didn't meet some milestones. So, and those milestones are at the beginning, middle, and end of the project. really to ensure that the affordable housing isn't front-loaded and then you don't see anything for another 10 years, and it's not back-loaded so you don't have to wait because of what we learned based on our research. So we were able to accomplish that in addition to ESD committing to create a subsidiary corporation, the Atlantic Yards Community Development Corporation, to oversee and monitor the public benefits and promises.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, the community aspects of that. Can you go into some details as to how that organization can kind of help keep the Forest City Route accountable along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to note is that this is the only ESDC project of this size that doesn't have a separate subsidiary corporation, and so it was, it's a pretty significant difference in terms of how they approach this project and how they've approached other projects. And considering the controversy, considering the amount of public benefit, considering the level of public investment that's already been made into this project, it really was crying out for some oversight. So the Atlantic Yards Community Development Corporation will have 14 members. 9 will be appointed by the governor, 5 appointed by local elected officials. And even the governor's appointees, no more than 5 can be city or state employees. And there's a real emphasis on ensuring that there's consultation with the local community boards about who gets appointed, and ensuring that folks are local residents. But basically the main responsibility of that CDC, that subsidiary from ESD, will be to monitor the public benefits that have been promised and to ensure that the impacts are something that are mitigated as well. And there's staff assigned and resources to do that.
Now, you touched on the gentrification aspects of this whole project, which obviously was kind of the real hot button point with kind of surrounding the entire development. Now, do you think this affordable housing agreement will kind of help stem the gentrification that's going on a little bit? And I'm curious also, kind of folding into that, the rebranding of this now. It's no longer Atlantic Yards, right? It's Pacific Park. Right. Does that have any significance in kind of the grand scheme of what this housing agreement means? Well,
I mean, I think we need to be realistic about the project stemming the tide of gentrification. The reality is that we've had an affordable housing crisis in the city of New York for more than 70 years. That's why we have rent stabilization. And that has only gotten worse over the last several years. So, the provision of 2,250 units that are affordable is definitely significant, but the demand far, far outstrips the supply of affordable housing, even with this project. We need to do something. Certainly not doing anything won't help. I think the rebranding, I think, obviously Forest City has a new partnership with Greenland Holdings, and that really has brought in the capital that they needed in order to move forward with the project. I think it's part of a larger emphasis on basically hitting a reset button for Forest City. They want to basically, the past is the past, the future is the future with Atlantic Yards, with Pacific Park. And I think, that they've been dogged, obviously, by a lot of controversy. And I think there are a number of positive aspects to the project. And I think the rebranding is part of highlighting the positive and hopefully letting go of the negative.
Sure. Now, in terms of the defining affordability in this in the housing agreements, we talk a lot about AMI and things like that. Yeah. Are those similar kind of criteria here?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is similar to any other affordable housing project that's built in the city of New York. So in this case, the AMI levels were something that were agreed to as part of that memorandum of understanding between Acorn and Forest City. And the AMI levels were targeted between 30% of area median income to 160% of area median income. And right now, 100% of area median income in the city of New York is about $84,000 for a family of 4. But Brooklyn's median income is closer to $45,000 for a family of 4. And AMI has gone up considerably faster than Brooklyn's area median income. And AMI is something that's defined by HUD. It's not just the 5 boroughs of the city of New York. It involves parts of Westchester. It used to involve parts of Long Island. That's been dropped. But in general, AMI is rising faster. HUD AMI is rising faster than Brooklyn's AMI. And so, what that means specific to the Atlantic Yards or Pacific Park project, I myself have to get used to calling it Pacific Park, is that basically, if it's built as the agreements were made years ago, then that would mean that families earning about $25,000 a year to $130,000 a year would be eligible for the affordable housing. That certainly is a pretty broad range. But the reality is that much of the need, and there's need at all ranges, but much of the need really, and the largest gap is on the folks that have the lower incomes.
Interesting. Now, how will people be able to apply for the housing, and in terms of the qualifying? Is it like a lottery type of system?
It'll be a lottery system. So part of what's shifting right now in the affordable housing arena in the city is in general, how the depth of affordability and whether or not subsidy is used to reach that affordability. In the case of Atlantic Yards, the city has some level of commitment to provide subsidy for the project. And in the city's case, how lotteries work is that basically there's a citywide lottery process. Now you can apply online for the NewYorkCity.gov website. And basically the preference is for the local community board residents, so 50% preference for local community board residents. And it's really about matching income and family size and looking at preferences and things like that. And it's critically important that people are aware of the lotteries that will be coming up and quite honestly take care of any credit issues so that they can take advantage of the opportunity. Their Fifth Avenue Committee and a number of other nonprofit organizations in and around the downtown Brooklyn area are actually hosting lottery preparation workshops for folks so that people can take advantage of the lotteries when they come up, because the units that are coming online aren't just the ones at Atlantic Yards. When downtown Brooklyn was rezoned, there was a number of as part of that redevelopment, a number of affordable units are also coming online as a result of that. So, local residents in and around downtown Brooklyn have, significant opportunity to gain access to affordable housing. Again, the need far outstrips the supply, but there is definitely some opportunity.
Right. Now, kind of looking more just big picture. I mean, I'm just curious. Hindsight's always 20/20, but if looking back, 10 years ago. Would you guys have done anything different in terms of negotiating this agreement, maybe in terms of pushing harder at Forest City Radnor, or I'm always curious, after these things are hammered out, like if there are any regrets, any things like that you can.
I think there are more lessons learned. I mean, I think hopefully there's been a message to the development community that you can't promise and not deliver, or promise and delay on your delivery of the public benefits. The reality is that there's been hundreds of millions of dollars in direct public investment in this project. There were zoning waivers that allowed buildings to go to 60 stories. With use of eminent domain, and I think the level of scrutiny and accountability that the public demands as a result of that investment of the public dollar, indirect or direct, into a private project is one where I hope that the development community understands that they have to be forthcoming and timely with the public benefits. So I think the lesson learned hopefully is partly on the other side, honestly, in the development community. And I think government, in particular the state of New York, under previous administrations was taking the tact that the oversight didn't seem to be needed. And the reality is that this is a $5 billion project that is at the nexus of multiple communities. It had significant, the public benefit piece was significant, and the impacts are quite significant, especially on the local communities. That should have been part of what was put in place to begin with. I think a lot of the lawsuits could have been avoided, honestly, had folks engaged with the community and trusted that the community could, wrap wrap our heads around a project of this size. So I think that's a piece of it. And you know, I believe Fifth Avenue Committee and the members of Brooklyn Speaks and a lot of the local elected officials have been pretty consistent on our message, honestly, about needing to deliver on the public benefits and the need for accountability. And I think it just took a shift in administrations, both at the state and the city level, and a realization on Forest City Ratner's part about the benefit to them in their ability to move forward to try to, you know, meet us, if you will. There was an alignment that happened over the last several months.
Michelle Delauz, the Executive Director of the Fifth Avenue Committee, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.